So I wanted to talk about kind of a sweeping problem that I see in the world at large today, and what I think might be able to be done about it. This kind of goes back to one of the first videos I ever made on this channel, which was the bloating and sort of scammy nature of universities. And since then, I've basically come to realize that most every university feeds off of the promise of social mobility while providing low budget information that the people that they're admitting can't tell is basically useless low budget information. The reason the information is low budget is very simple. It's very cheap to teach people useless information, sweet nothings. It's not hard to do research, and the dumber the information is, and by dumber I mean less rigorous, less critical, less specific, the cheaper it is to produce. You can produce hours and hours of courses on sweet nothings for very little money compared to, say, something more rigorous. Now, I think the main problem, or I guess let me go into the reason why they do this. The reason why they do this is because it's easy to harvest low IQ women in particular for degrees which are completely counterproductive and useless. And they can harvest them as debt slaves, and they're not going to learn anything. They shouldn't even really be in college. They're not intelligent. They have an anxiety disorder, and they've been told through everybody in their sort of low-class family that college is the way to get out of that cycle. And it's a very dirty trick. I'm not blaming these people. They're getting scammed. I'm blaming the university faculty and the administrators for allowing these pseudo-disciplines to pop up, particularly in the social sciences, because the social sciences are complicated and they're hard to do with any degree of specificity. So what they do is they sort of harvest these unintelligent women who are interested in learning about people, and they bring them in, and they don't make them do any rigorous mathematical proofs. They don't make them test hypotheses. They don't, like most social science papers now, or a substantial chunk of them don't have hypotheses in them. That right there should be a giant red flag. They're basically they're indoctrinating these women to write diary articles that don't have a clear defined hypothesis, don't have any sort of numerical backing for their data at all. And I just want people to think about this. If somebody was completely illiterate, do you think they should go to school? Do you think they should go to college? No, they should not. They would not be able to get into college if they were illiterate. And presently, that's the way things are. If somebody has never read 2 pages of a Dr. Seuss book, they're not going to get into college. And that's fine. But if somebody's innumerate, we've got whole wings of academic disciplines that are completely innumerate. They're not teaching people how to think. And the thing about being high verbal IQ is that you can produce an endless slew of rational justifications for literally anything, for whatever idea appeals to you emotionally. At some basic biological level, you can spin off a million different rationalizations, and dumb people will believe you. 80% of the population will believe you if you're smarter than them, because they can't tell. They're not numerate either. But where that breaks down, and you see this in the Jordan Peterson, Kathy Newman discussion that happened on the news, there's 2 people who are very, very literate. They're both literate. What broke down for Kathy Newman and why she was basically rationalizing around in circles trying to get her head on straight was that Jordan Peterson is also numerate. He can criticize things and has the gumption to just say, No, you're wrong. 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5. And it doesn't matter what you say. And he can just die on that hill because she will never be able to defeat that because she isn't numerate. She has no mathematical ability. It was very clear from the reductive and like circular nature of her arguments. And math is also related to logic and critical thinking. She didn't have the ability to critical think because if she did, she would look in the mirror and with those arguments and say, "What am I doing? This is stupid." And a lot of people can't do that, or maybe they've never been taught, but I think more likely is that it's biological. And so what our colleges are doing is to pad their own pockets. They are creating disciplines which are only literate and therefore can spin off an endless slew of rationalizations about anything. Nobody in this is numerate. If they are numerate, it's only in the service of their rationalizations. So they can maybe cherry pick a data set and make it sound sophisticated and intelligent for, again, the 90% of the population who don't care about these things. And then the problem with that is it has a compounding, diluting effect, where if you let in 80% of your student base to harvest them for debt money, like a greedy pig, and they're innumerate, they'll never learn how to do math or logic in any hard sense. You shove them into some vague social science discipline where you teach them to be an activist, and then you pilfer their pockets for debt money and you know, the only unforgivable loan in this country. And then they're never going to get a job doing that allows them to pay off their debt. You're filling their head up with a bunch of bullshit. And yeah, this is basically what's going on. And it's really, really bad. And where I was going with that like compounding, diluting effect thing is that these people will enter into the academic realm and then they'll produce a bunch of data that becomes hard-coded and peer-reviewed by their peers in the field who are just like them, just as innumerate, just as ideologically rational and motivated. And it will become embedded in this canon, and then people will cite their nonsense. So, I mean, I think if the universities had any integrity whatsoever, they would stop picking people's pockets, and they would only let in people on the basis of being numerate. And also, this is kind of an aside, but a couple weeks ago, I was in a city, and their college has a lazy river in it. It's like, what about a lazy river contributes to human understanding at all? It's basically become a theme park, and this is another way that they can justify raising the prices up and picking people's pockets with debt. And these are often poor people who have no ability to understand the depths of how badly they're being scammed, and their parents don't understand either, and they're just throwing away their life savings at debt and money so that they can be filled up with nonsense and go on to become some middle management at some bullshit corporation, some call center, and rant and rave about diversity in the call center or something. So yeah, it's a really, really bad state of affairs. And ultimately it leads to the butchery of children too, because now you've got Joe Biden, whose cabinet is somehow being filled up with these idiot activists, and he's saying that now a doctor has to affirm somebody's gender identity when they go in, despite the fact that that will increase their suicide rate by upwards of 50%, which is higher than any population, including Jews in Nazi Germany. So, yeah, but all of this has its roots in our rotten university system, and if anybody has the power to change that, who has the balls to go up against these people because they crumble as soon as you go at them, this is what you do. And I said this 2 years ago in my first video on this channel. Don't let anybody into college with an IQ of less than 120. Forgive the student loans for the people who you pickpocketed. Let them know you pickpocketed them and forgive their student loans. And if on top of all of that, your university can, and also, no, purge the record of academic journals from any social justice, anything that doesn't numerically stand up, anything that is purely rational, purely a story, purely a diary entry, anything that doesn't have a hypothesis, just erase that from the record immediately. because otherwise we're gonna butcher our children, and we're not gonna know why. We're gonna be blaming their suicidal ideations and the fact that our children are gonna be dropping like flies from mental illness. We're gonna be blaming that on like lack of diversity or bullying or oppression or some such thing, when really the rotten heart of this society is in the university system and their greed.